Welcome, or hopefully welcome back to the Reluctant Entrepreneur podcast. Whenever I speak to business groups on the subject of entrepreneurship, I stress the importance of making a social impact far beyond the goal of just selling products or services. I believe every company should be greater than the sum of its parts. My guest today started a business with the sole goal of creating a social impact. Genevieve Piturro is an author, speaker, and the founder of the nonprofit organization Pajama Program. She spent 2 decades as a television marketing executive in New York City before a pivotal moment in 2001 led her to establish Pajama Program. While volunteering at a shelter, a child's question about pajamas inspired her to start delivering pajamas and books to children in need. Her programs delivered 350,000 sets of new pajamas and storybooks. 22,500 families learned to foster healthy sleep routines through Sweet Dreamzzz for early childhood programming. And 15,491 elementary students learned the importance of bedtime at Storytime Plus. And all of that was just in 2024. Cumulatively, the Pajama Program has delivered over 7 million pajamas and books to children in the United States. Piturro's journey from corporate life to nonprofit work is detailed in her book, Purpose, Passion, and Pajamas, published in August of 2020. She is also a sought-after speaker, sharing insights on purpose-driven leadership and the importance of human connection. Her story has been featured on platforms such as Oprah, Today, and CNN. And today, she is my guest on the Reluctant Entrepreneur podcast. Stick around. This is going to be great. Genevieve Piturro, thanks for being my guest today. Welcome.
Thank you, Mike.
I have doubled the amount of guests that I have. You are my second guest to air on this program. So as long as I can keep that rate, that doubling every time I do a new episode, I'm going to be in good shape.
Good.
I spoke in the intro about the genesis of Pajama Program, and it stemmed from a child's question that caused you to do it. I didn't state what the question was. What was the question that started this movement?
Well, I was reading to these children in the shelter, and they were just so afraid, and so much trauma had been part of their lives for so long. And when I saw them week after week, different groups, what they had in common was that they were in clothes that didn't fit and that weren't clean. And when I followed one night to see where they were going to sleep, they were going to sleep in those clothes. Caregivers were wonderful and loving, but I saw this picture in my mind, and then I quickly saw my mom at our bedside, and we were cuddling, and we were in beautiful, clean, warm pajamas of our choice. And I brought pajamas one night so that they could change into them from what they'd been wearing for who knows how long. And a little girl who was so afraid of me watched me give them to the kids, and she just watched me, and she wouldn't let me come near her. And finally, I made my way gently close to her, and I tried to hand her a pair of pajamas that were the color of the shirt she was wearing. And I asked her, honey, don't you want your pajamas? And she asked me, what are pajamas?
Wow.
That was the question that changed everything.
Wow, that was a spark. Did you know, right then, I got to do something, or did that just ignite a long fuse that eventually led to this?
No, I knew I had to do something. I just didn't know what it would become. I just thought it was something that I personally had to do, but that passion and that this isn't right. This is not a big thing. I can fix it. I can make a change. That came right away.
Sure. You can buy a pair of pajamas and give it to a child, right?
Right. Exactly.
Which eventually would lead to more than 7 million, which is unfathomable to me.
Yeah.
So before this journey into entrepreneurship and social impact, you were in the corporate world, right? You were working in was it television or media of some sort? I
Yes,
believe?
I I worked in television syndication for several years. Yes.
Okay, so you did that for, I think I read a couple of decades or so.
Oh,
So you
no,
probably
10 years.
Oh, 10 years. Okay. All right. I'm doubling the amount
Yeah.
of credit that you deserve. Um, I was going to say, if you had 20 years, you probably started as child labor, right? Because
Right. No.
math doesn't add up that way. So well, working for, for a paycheck, can be frustrating, and corporate ladder, all that, but there is a certain sense in most cases of security. Someone else is worrying about how to cover payroll, right? You're getting a paycheck every week. If you don't screw up, you may keep your job, and maybe even go up the
Right.
corporate ladder and make more money. It's a bit of a wheel that us hamsters run on, right? I did it as well. What Besides the what are pajamas moment, what led you to give that the so-called security, the cadence of a regular paycheck, the place to go where someone else cleans the floors and cleans the windows, and all of that, to the unknown world of entrepreneurship, where you're the chief cook and bottle washer, and there is no guarantee of a paycheck.
Well, Mike, it's funny because I never said to myself, I don't want to work for anyone else. I want to work for myself, like a lot of people do.
Right.
That's a much more clear way to go at it. But with me, I was working long hours, very hard for that corner office. I just wanted to be successful and independent. And I think I missed a lot of whispers, a lot of second thoughts about all this time I was spending and my goals and what they really meant, because I heard a voice in me one afternoon ask me, if this is the next 30 years of your life, is this enough? And that's
Wow.
what prompted the next feeling of, I missed something and something's missing. And all of a sudden it became a lonely journey, and I'd be there alone with nice things, but I felt the absence of any purpose or any meaning in my life and what I was doing. I got the financial, piece. I got that security. I don't know now that we any of us would say any job is financially secure, but I felt it then.
As secure as one hopes, right?
Yes, right. So it was more that it came from a feeling of loss and a feeling of a shock that I could be in the same position alone and just working for money in another 30 years, when I was 65. And that's what changed in me, that I wanted to fill that emptiness.
Yeah, interesting. I don't think corporate jobs necessarily fill emptiness. If there's emptiness, it's not going to be generally filled there. Although many people are fulfilled in their 9 to 5, and
Yes,
I was.
get there.
The reason I call this show, and which was named after my book, The Reluctant Entrepreneur, is because in my journey, I had a passion for a product. I had no desire to run a business. No part of me wanted to go off on my own. I was quite fulfilled doing what I was doing, but I couldn't get anyone interested in my product. And I kept trying to sell it to my employer and others, and no one was interested. And finally, I thought, okay, the only way to do it is do it myself. So it was reluctantly that I entered into this space, where yours almost seems like a similar journey, in that you weren't born with the desire to be your own boss, it sounds like, but you were born with the desire to do something bigger, to be fulfilled in something greater than selling television ads or syndicating shows or whatever it is you were doing. That's what it sounds like. So you had this conversation with the child. The child asked that profoundly innocent question, what are pajamas? And that told you something needed to be fixed, and you decided that you would do something. And something led to something else, and that started the ball. So when you made the decision to leave the corporate world and embark in this, was it immediately called Pajama Program, or did that kind of morph after some time?
It morphed after I was delivering for months, and I realized this was taking up 90% of my attention, whereas the job was taking up less and less. And I kept thinking, what is this thing I'm doing? What is this? And another moment on a New York subway, I met a great guy during this time who actually was the only one of several that I spoke to about what I was doing on the sly. I was trying to be secretive about what I was doing. He was the only one that said, go for it. So I knew he was on my side. I knew he was a great guy who got what I was doing and why I might be making this major change. And he said, keep asking, ask the universe, meditate, think about it, ask the question, what is this? What is this about? And I did that. And on the subway in New York City, I heard and saw the words like a raindrop plop into my head, Pajama Program. I heard it and I saw the words like bubble writing we used to write in school.
Right.
And I knew that was what it was called.
It's funny. Sometimes the universe is cryptic and subtle, and sometimes it's sledgehammer and bubble writing. In your case, you got the bubble writing, right?
Yeah, and a raindrop. I felt it.
Right. It's funny because you can't get radio stations on the subway, but the universe can get through those walls. So now you've got the concept in your head, Pajama Program. How did you go about building a brand and defining the mission, from the ground up? I mean, you were doing it, so you had a little bit of a skeleton of a model, but you doing it out of sheer passion and then scaling a business, even though it's a nonprofit business, it's still a business. It is challenging. So where did you come up with the resources or the guidance? If you had guidance, the person you met on the subway clearly was a catalyst to encourage you to start. So were there resources or people that guided you to get this thing started, and how did you go about building the brand side of it?
Well, I was doing this on my own. And then wonderful man I told you about, we got married. And so I enlisted him to drive me to the shelters and pick me up when I had too many bags of pajamas at the store. So he was helping in that way. And I was still doing this secretively and trying to hold down my job because I had bills to pay. I owned the co-op we lived in, and I had to be responsible, and I didn't know what this was that I was doing or how long it would last, and certainly wasn't paying me. So I tried to keep my job, and I kept it as long as I could. And there's a whole story there. But what happened was somebody called and said that they were from a national magazine, which I knew, now it's online, and said, are you the lady delivering pajamas to children in shelters? And I said, yes. And she said, can I write a little article, just a small article? And I said, sure. So she wrote a little article. Well, I didn't realize the effect that the story and that little girl would have on strangers until I got to my co-op one night. The magazine had been delivered to the subscribers first before it went on the newsstand. So I had no clue it was even out. And boxes and packages, hundreds, maybe thousands, arrived the first day. And then for weeks after, my new husband and I couldn't even see each other in my one-bedroom apartment because the boxes were so high. We were trying to open them as fast as we could. And the maintenance and the concierge and the management company was thinking I was doing some illegal business in my home. And I couldn't even grasp how many people cared. But what happened was one of the letters said from a company, will you send us your 501c3 so we can give you a grant? Now, I had been opening packages of money, cash, checks, pajamas, books, and this was an organization's letter. And I looked at my new husband and I put the letter up and I said, what is this thing? 501c3. I didn't even know. I didn't know what it was.
So people were giving up to that point without any expectation of benefit on their end,
right.
like no tax deduction or anything like that.
Right. it was 99.9% my money. And nice people gave me pajamas and books who heard, but not that many. But that was the first wake-up call that look how many people trust me. Look how many people care.
Right.
So then I said, I have to find out what this is. And I have to do this right. And then I started down that road, which was a whole different ballgame than doing what I had been doing up to that point. So all of that paperwork, and I got a mentor begging with people that I knew or that knew people in nonprofit. I found one in the executive director of the New York Stress for Success. She was kind enough to answer my questions, and we maintained our friendship and her mentorship for many years. And an attorney and a CPA, I had to beg, borrow, whatever free advice I could get. And that's when it had to come into a formalized product. And I needed the mission statement. And I had to think about who are these children. And that's when it got real.
Yeah. So speaking of getting real, entrepreneurship can come with many unexpected challenges, which is probably a very understatement. Can you share a moment when you faced a significant hurdle? Maybe it was in the beginning, maybe it was as you were scaling, maybe it was all of it, and how you managed to overcome it. And limit it to maybe just the top 300 challenges.
Yeah, I know there have been so many. Well, fundraising was and is for many in nonprofit and founders of anything, raising money is always something that keeps most of us up at night.
Yeah.
And it did for me. And I'm thinking of several things that happened. On the non-emergency side, because it was just me, I didn't have to really worry about major donors, but I was going into debt, major debt, take away credit card debt. And I vowed to work in McDonald's if I had to. And then that whole episode with give us your 501c3 and getting the 501c3 within a few months, maybe 6 months, helped me breathe a little bit. Mm-hmm. But the recession came, and that was probably the worst time and the most frightening time for all nonprofits and for us. We were a very small board, names on the 501c3. I had been the one with most ideas, and I had no idea what to do. And we had lists of children. We were a legitimate organization. People were counting on us. That was an emotional and a financial hurdle. And the answer, or the impetus for the answer, is not what anyone might think. We didn't have a major donor. We weren't getting any of the financial money in Manhattan that so many nonprofits were getting. That's not what helped us. What helped us is more human connection, human nature in so many issues that we need to solve. One of our board members, seeing me distraught and being distraught herself, all of us were just at our wits' end. After quiet, trying somebody, I'm hoping somebody's going to come up with some kind of an answer, financial answer. She actually said, "Let's go bowling." And I didn't even think I heard her right.
You're like,
you can
what?
Imagine the atmosphere. And she said, let's have a bowling party, a fundraising bowling party. And I literally said, does anybody bowl in New York City? To me, that was, and I loved her dearly, but I thought, where is she coming from? I'm talking sincere worry and panic. And she said, let's do it. I had no other ideas, so I said, okay. Now, I sweated out. We sent out invitations. We emailed everyone. Now, this is a time when everybody was at their wits' end, right? The recession.
Yep.
And in New York City, we were hit hard. So we charged like $20, $25 a person to bowl. Well, let me tell you something. We didn't raise $1 million, but we raised hope. We raised morale. A lot of people came because everybody was looking for some relief, some fun, and to do good on top of that, get away from the fear and the anxiety of your empty wallets. Everybody wanted to be together and to rally around something. We had the best night. We made friends. I talked about Pajama Program. Most of the people there knew about it. And from that moment forward, so many people who heard about us through 6 Degrees of Separation, that old commercial, you tell one person, you tell one person.
Yeah, sure.
It changed everything. It just raised, that human connection raised morale. And it was the most miraculous recovery. Slow, but I point to that every time. People together, people care, people want to help, and people needed, as much as we did, that joy for 2 hours. It was amazing.
I got 2 takeaways from that. There's probably more, but 2 resonated with me. One was that you avoided making a fear-based decision where something that makes no sense in your world is a stupid idea. I'm adding some hyperbole there. Yet, what else are you going to do? There was no other choice. And so you just said, okay, all right. You kind of yielded to the universe. It made no sense, but you just, okay, kind of close your eyes, trust the process, and it worked. I've had dozens upon dozens and dozens of those experiences. And now the crazier it sounds, the more eager I am to embrace it, because my experience is, if it makes no sense in my world, if I have a problem and the solution makes no sense, it probably will work, right? That's just been proven to me over and over again. The second is, and I've served on board of directors for 501c3s, and I always used to stress the importance of friend raising, not just fundraising. And a lot of times, probably through fear-based decisions, the lens of money is just, right here, right? Particularly with nonprofits or even for-profits that are starting up. We're all nonprofit, at some point. We're in such a panic. We're so laser focused on bringing in money, we forget about the hope and the friendship and other less tangible, important aspects of building a business, teamwork and camaraderie and all of that connection. So, we make decisions through the lens of money. And it's funny, when you make decisions through the lens of money, you might bring money in, but it probably won't be profitable money. It will lead to something worse.
It's one time, a lot of times, right? Just for the moment.
Absolutely. I was really good at bringing in money to cover payroll. I did that for a long time. It's just make deals on stuff, sell stuff for below cost just to cover payroll. To me, it's kind of like New York real estate. 3 most important things in New York real estate: location, location, location. In business, 3 most important things: cash flow, cash flow, cash flow, right? Profit, I don't even know what profit meant the first few years. I'm like, the P word, whatever that is. Yes, it's the promised land over the hill, right? Someday we'll get there. To me, everything was, can we cover payroll? Can we cover expenses? Can we buy parts? Can we pay rent? Can we do all that? Profit was someone else's, nirvana goal. But the importance of friend raising in that moment, you needed that before you needed money, because without that hope, without that camaraderie, without that recommitment, without that show of support and love, you weren't going to get the money, right? So that probably was the grease that lubricated the gears that allowed the machine to go forward and start bringing in investment or, donations and things like that.
And I always tell everybody that I coach or mentor, you don't need everybody to come and support you. You need your people who are resonating with what you're doing, whether you're building something, whether you're selling something, whether you're serving someone, well, they're all serving, but doesn't matter. You don't need everybody. Not everybody is going to jump to support you, but you don't need everybody. You need your people. And when you attract those people, they're inspired too. You know, I couldn't sit there saying, as the founder, I'm the only one who gets inspiration and all these other people don't. She was inspired too. She felt, she was invested. She felt the pain of that little girl. She was sitting there for a reason. And so I learned she had this idea that came from a good place, a place of inspiration. And I can't own that inspiration for everything that was and is Pajama Program.
Yeah. You know, in my geeky world, part of what we do, we build equipment for the electronics industry, and part of it uses chemicals. So I've got a little bit of chemical knowledge and electrical and mechanical knowledge, just enough to be dangerous. And there's in the chemical world, there's a popular quote, you know, it's Hansen's law of solubility, which is like attracts like. Take that out of the chemical world. In your world and in my business world, like attracts like. And what I mean by that is we used to be an obnoxious company. We were braggadocious advertisers. You know, our stuff is great. Their stuff sucks. You know, it was just terrible advertising. It's tacky now, cringeworthy looking back.
Mm-hmm.
We led on price. You know, we'll beat the price. You know, we were ferocious competitors, and we attracted customers who led with price, who were ferocious in their own way, and they were toxic customers. They were the most needy. They were the ones that we made the least amount of money on, if anything, and they were needy the whole way through. They didn't maintain their equipment. You know, our stuff is sophisticated. It requires regular maintenance, and they didn't do it, and it was awful. And then eventually we switched our mantra to lead with value and education and no more advertising. And I thought that was just a change for us, that we would start acting differently. What happened was we started attracting different types of customers. We attracted customers who didn't lead with price. We attracted customers who were seeking a partnership. And you know, like attracts like, love attracts love. And when we led with that, we received that. It was the craziest thing. And now I say it was the craziest thing in the moment because it was, again, one of those things that makes no sense, but seems to work. And I'm very analytical. I need to understand cause and effect. I need to draw lines between what I did and the results that I got. And it's like the lines went through a fog. I couldn't see the line connect to the other side. It just did. And I saw it by the results. And it sounds like you had that exact same experience. After that bowling experience, after the reconnection, you attracted what you were putting out. And it's amazing how that happens. I think it's a universal law. I think there's no choice. It has to happen. It's like gravity. You know, you throw an apple in the air, it comes back down. Newton figured that out. And I think it's just one of those universal laws that it's hard to define. It's foggy, but it's as sure as gravity. At least that's been my experience.
I agree. I'm taking
nice
notes.
to hear you have that too. Yeah.
Yeah. I wrote a note when you were talking. It's the human connection, and it's for any business, any group, anything, any group that has a common goal, who has somebody who has a vision and hopes to attract others to see the good and want to be part of that impact that you want to make. And it's not the power of one that changes things. It's the power of one another that moves mountains and moves people. And that goes for every single aspect of our lives.
Yeah. A lot of the lessons I learned in business are not limited to business. And I'm sure in your coaching career, and we're going to talk about that in just a little bit, that comes up. I mean, people may approach you for one issue and it's it's a broader issue. It's even a broader solution. In the business world, there's a few types of businesses. There are for-profit businesses, not for-profit businesses, and for-profit businesses that are acting more like a nonprofit, right? Which is like the first 10 years of most new businesses' journey. Are there different metrics when it comes to nonprofit versus for-profit? And I think there's a misconception that a 501c3, a nonprofit, can't make any money. Obviously, your income needs to exceed your costs, right? Otherwise, you can only give away so many pair of pajamas, and then you're out of money. So it's not that you're not profitable. It's different. You're not distributing those funds, and people aren't getting rich off it. But are the matrix different? When you came from the corporate world, you had a certain metric that you had to meet. There were KPIs. There were all these financial things to know how your company was doing, how you were doing, your department was doing. Is that very different in the nonprofit world, or is it just the same but different?
Well, I think it starts for a nonprofit founder. For me, and for a lot of people that I mentor and coach, it starts with your heart saying, this is wrong. I see something that can be fixed. I've had a personal experience that is affecting me, that's propelling me. That's where I started. And that's where I think a lot of nonprofit founders start. I didn't have the money to do it. I think if I had said to myself, I'm going to start a business, okay, then I would think of it through my head first. What do I need to do? Who do I need to help me? What's a plan? I think that would be a head-led decision. And I think a lot of nonprofit founders are heart-led. However, more and more for-profit business leaders are 50-50, at least, sometimes more heart-driven. And I think that that's a wonderful reflection of where we're headed. A lot of it came out of COVID. A lot of that was because we all rethought where we were. And I think that so many of us thought, I'm missing meaning. And this was a near-death experience and a real wake-up call. So I think especially young people, they want to love what they do and they want to make a lot of money, and more power to them. And I think that's the nonprofit. Start with your heart and figure out the money later is melting into the for-profit. But I think that to me is, in my work, what I see. The heart is more and more in the for-profit. And I think leadership is too. And I often say, it's about love. Love for your leaders, love for the people you work with, and love for the work you do. Love from a leader, love for a leader. It's you gotta love it. You gotta love it. You don't have to, but to really feel fulfilled, if that's your goal, then you gotta love it. You gotta love it all.
Yeah, when I don't have a business speaking on entrepreneurial matters. My business is still around. It's still making machines. It's still doing its thing. Although I'm not involved in it on a day-to-day basis. My team, frankly, runs a better company than I ever did, which is probably a typical entrepreneur's story. But when I do speak with mostly like college kids at university level, I talk about entrepreneurship to engineering students. And I tell them that, to your point, it's hard to say if you're making a widget, you got to love the widget. You got to love what you do. You got to throw all your passion into the widget. Right. People do. I think Steve Jobs arguably put a lot of love and passion into his Mac, his beloved Mac. And that that showed.
Richard Branson. I'm sure he
Richard
loves his
Branson. Yes. Richard Branson is, I consider him my mentor, although I've never met the guy. He doesn't know who I
Me
am,
too.
but I
I
love
don't.
his model. He knows when to get out of his own way. He knows his limitations and his strengths, and
Yeah, but
he
you
knows to
feel the
bring.
love he has for what he's built.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. He builds the brand. He's got a unique Austin Powers swagger to him, which is just, yeah, I love the guy. But sometimes it's difficult to find that love and that passion over the service or the product that you're building. So what I always tell people, or at least advise people, is, as I said in the beginning, in the intro, the business needs to be greater than the sum of its parts. If you're making buttons for shirts, if that's your business, have all the passion for buttons you want, but be more than buttons. Make the world a better place.
Yeah.
And have your company do something, sponsor a little league team or whatever. I mean, even a tiny thing like that. If the business can make a social impact, even though that's not its core mission statement, make the best buttons in the world and make the world a better place. And sometimes making the world a better place goes beyond buttons. And in your world, that was your mission. So, that's two birds and one stone. But for other businesses, I advise people to find a passion beyond just what you do and throw everything you can into that while maintaining your business. And because one can fuel the other. And I think that gives a lot of entrepreneurs a greater goal and knowing that they're making the world a better place. How many people can say that? How many people can go to bed at night going, I just made the world just a tiny little bit better, right?
Right.
And if you can't do it through what you make or the services you provide directly, do it indirectly. And I think that I refer to the business gods, and I don't mean that, literally. I mean that quite metaphorically. And the business gods, are keeping score. They're like the judges at the Olympics. And I've made so many mistakes in my career that I deserved to go out of business. But we were doing things beyond our business. We've always been quite philanthropic and supportive of causes and things like that. And I think at some point the business gods looked at each other and went, this guy is a terrible business person. We need to just let him go. And then one of them went, yeah, but look at what they're doing over here. I think it kind of bought us a little bit of grace. It bought us a pass. And of course, I mean that all metaphorically, but it can't hurt. And I think it just gives us a greater reason to stick around and stay in business, even though our business acumen may not deserve that conclusion. I know that sounds a little nutty, but that's what I believe.
I get it. And I want to add one more thing. How many times do we know someone or see something or read about someone who started something and a few years down just couldn't continue and the business went under? How many times do you hear the thing they hate most is that they have to leave the people they loved working with?
Yeah.
The people who are your heart and soul and poured everything in with you and it didn't work. That's the love of people you work with. That's a contribution. That's what's even more devastating to so many people who see their business go under, that those good people they're not going to see them every day. They're not going to be able to continue to grow this and put ideas in the hat and find solutions and have the big wins and the little wins. That's the loss.
Yeah, I think as my business scaled, and clearly yours, that thought of responsibility looms over us, right? And I think the good part of that is it allows us to make more careful, more cautious decisions. It's not all about us. It's not, thankfully, I say thankfully then that I don't have the same skills or same attributes then that I do now, because then when I started my business, it was all ego, bravado, arrogance, naivety, a poor assessment of risk, all this. So I'm just like, I can do this. Just jump into the deep end of the cold pool. And I'm not going to be part of the 70% of businesses that fail statistically. I'm better than that. So those are the skill sets that started my business. But thankfully, they had to morph. I had to put my ego in jail and keep it locked away. And then I had to start making decisions beyond just what served me. Because all of a sudden, I had employees and they had families and they had mortgages and they put braces on their kids' teeth and I would go to their kids' school plays. And next thing you know, I felt like I was a big family.
Godmother, yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know, I read a bunch of books, early on in my career about, don't get too close to your team and, arm's distance and, whatever. But I don't know, I can't do that. So like a parent, when you're single and no kids, you jump out of airplanes and climb mountains and, swim with sharks. And then when you have children, you tend to rein it in a little bit. And I think the same is true in business. Before we get into what you're doing now, I want to ask you one more question about your entrepreneurial journey. And that was, there are setbacks, many, many, many setbacks in anyone's entrepreneurial journey and career journey for that matter. It's not just related to entrepreneurs. How have you, over the years when you've suffered a defeat or things were just down or you got to the point maybe where like during the recession or maybe even the pandemic that you thought, that's it, we're done. There's no hope. And if that happened to you, how did you find the strength to persevere? How did you find the resilience? Because clearly you came out the other side. Pajama Program is doing what it's doing. It's marching forward. You're now doing coaching and things like that. So it didn't kill you. Everything survived. How did you find the strength to get through that, the toughest times?
I think we all have it. I think I've learned to call it moxie. So I named my second book Purpose, Passion, and Moxie, because I was also thinking, what do I have that keeps going? And what do so many of us have that keeps going, that just keeps us moving forward? And it's that perseverance, it's that courage. And I heard that word so long ago. It's just, you just have to find it. We all have it, but it's bringing it up and embracing it, and it's grit. Just one tiny step in front of the other. I don't know what else it is. For a lot of us, for me, in many of those situations with the money situation being tight and no ideas, I remember once going to a shelter and the woman took me aside, and I had been there many times, and she said, you don't know how many people say they're going to come back and they don't come back. And you know how many times our children have been disappointed when they've heard we'll be back and people don't come back. And that was like a stake in my heart. I said, I cannot be one of those people. And I'm sure there are a lot of valid reasons, and it might have been to me at some point if I couldn't get that moxie up, but that drove me. So whether it's similar to what you were talking about, all of these people depend on me. I bet a lot of people pull through because they want to do it for someone else. Certainly, they say mothers do more for their children than they do for themselves.
I was going to say that. It almost sounds like a parental thing. You'll
Yeah.
you'll jump on a bomb for your, on a
Right.
landmine for your child, right?
Right.
If there's no other choice. So
Right. Right. I think, and also a very big part of this, besides what you bring up in yourself, that moxie, is trusting other people, letting them have an idea. So many times I know when I was working for bosses, not leaders, it was their way. Nobody else had a good idea. Nobody else was brave enough to say, I have an idea. But if I hope I gave that board director, I opened a door for her to say, let's go bowling. And I think we're doing that more and more. We're trying, especially when we're desperate, we're trying to open the door, because you never know. You never know where somebody else's idea is going to lead. And you have to cultivate that kind of a culture. You have to invite those people in. You have to be open to something that's not your idea. That takes time. That takes a certain person. But I think that there are answers there, that because we're not asking for help, we're not asking for ideas, we don't have access to those answers. We just have access to our tiny brain.
yeah, when I first started my business, I was quite easily the smartest person in the room, only because it was just me. And then the main criteria to work with me was the acceptance of the financial offer and a pulse. I just needed bodies, right? And I was able to problem solve. I was able to figure out my way out of whatever challenge I had to a point. And then, I had this, what I call this magic wand. I would come in and I would just wave the magic wand and everything would work out. And then one day I went in and waved my magic wand and my magic wand was broken. So clearly I hit the limit of my capabilities. Today, my goal is to be surrounded by people smarter than me, more skilled than me. Smart is a hard word to define, but more skilled than me in the skills that I'm lacking. I want to be, metaphorically speaking, the stupidest person in the room. And I figured, I think I'm pretty bright. So if I can surround myself with people who are brighter, I'm in good shape, right? But that takes getting out of your own way. It takes letting go of ego. It takes, kind of close your eyes, trust the process, thinking. And that comes with time. I think the universe allows us to make mistakes. And the universe is extremely patient. It will show me, like, this is what we need to do, Mike. And I'm like, I'm not listening. And then it's like the best parent in the world. Like, okay, son, go ahead. We'll pick you up.
Right.
We'll dust you off, and we'll be here when you're ready. And I realized that every epiphany moment I've ever had, where I went, oh my God, I get it. Wow. If I really think about it, I was shown that 3 or 4 times over the years before it landed, right? And that's just the way it is. And once you learn it, it's as predictable as the sun rising and setting. Since we're talking business or coaching advice here, I've been on the receiving end of coaching advice. I'm a big fan of seeking advice, seeking assistance, working with someone that you trust. And in saying that, I'm gonna give this little anecdote that makes it seem like I don't respect that, but I'm making a greater point. What's the definition of a consultant? The definition of a consultant is someone you hire to tell you what time it is, and the first thing they ask you is, "Can I borrow your watch?" And meaning not that they're not providing a value or a service, meaning that you have access to the answers. You just can't see it, right? It's just not clear to you. They're not delivering something to you necessarily that is totally foreign. It's just something that hasn't awakened in your world at that point. Yeah, and at least my experience was that way. My experience was, well, instead of picking up this box, pick up this box. I knew both boxes were there, options, but I never considered doing that. And the person I worked with was always consider the possibilities. Just if something sounds nutty, and when I hired her, I don't think she would appreciate it. I refer to her as Yoda, not in a physical way, but in a this makes no sense way. It's just like, it's crazy. It's just like, that's too easy. And she taught me if something sounds crazy, you can reject it, or you can just consider the possibility. And I learned to put things on a shelf up here. It's like, instead of throwing it out, I'm just like, I'm going to put it on a shelf. I'm just going to consider the possibility. Yeah, I think it's nuts, but I'm going to consider the possibility that maybe it's not. And I can't tell you how many times over several months, or in some cases several years, all of a sudden I'd pull that idea off the shelf and I go, oh my God, that makes perfect sense. I just needed a little bit more context, a little bit more ingredients in the pot for it to turn into something valuable. So now you do, I know you do a lot of public speaking, and you are a business coach. Is that the best way to describe it? Or, okay. Tell me about that side of your business and what inspired that. And it seems like your heart is still in a giving mode. So that is a way of giving. But tell me about that side of your business, and what types of companies or people do you work with?
But I work mostly with two different people. I work with a lot of people who want to make a change, to find what really gives them purpose and meaning that they may have put on the back burner. So I work with people to make that change in a jump or a slide. Some people can make the jump. I made the jump. I had no business making the jump. I didn't have anything prepared. Some people do. That's a jump. Totally leave one thing and delve into another. And also teach people how to do the slide, to keep your job and to start
a little
small
transition.
steps.
Yeah.
Yes. But more and more, I like the leaders I'm working with who want, and I say be a voice that moves the world, who want to be, who have integrity that goes beyond themselves, who want to make an impact, who want to serve, who want to contribute to the greater good, and who want to inspire people to come and join them in this movement to do something. And it can be making something, it can be in service, it can be anything. They could make millions of dollars, more power to them, or it could be a nonprofit, it could be anything. But they're inspirational for other people, and they aspire to do something that makes a difference, that goes beyond themselves. And how do you attract people to help you create momentum like that? And it starts with an idea, but it's only you can only go as far as a physical person can walk. We need to inspire people who are looking for something similar and say, that's something I can get behind. That's something that I want to be a part of. So it's finding your voice to inspire people to create bigger change than you can do alone, or that your company can do alone. It's involving people. We all can name organizations and people that inspire us. We named Richie Branson, right? We named Steve Jobs. We can name Maya Angelou. We can name so many people that through whatever service, and it's all service, they've chosen, their impact to us is beautiful and lasting, and it's a legacy. And we all will have a legacy. We all have one. We're all creating one now. So those who really want to contribute in a bigger way need to find a way to attract others, how to have others align with what they're doing, to find out how their idea aligns with other people's, what they're looking for. So it's more aspirational. And I love it, because I think the heart right now of where we are. We want to touch people's lives. We want to look at people. We want to hold hands. We want to give a hand up. We want to be standing close to someone. And I want to work with those people.
Excellent. And is it fair to ask, how's business?
Yeah, people want to do this. Right now in the moment, it's a difficult atmosphere, but we'll get through it. There are things in the world that we'll get through it. And I think for that reason, there are people who see a way through it if we come together in smaller groups, bigger groups, and we show how we can impact one another in a positive way. Can't impact the entire world in the same way, but the people who want to do that, I think I want to be their cheerleader and show them how I had to let people in. I had to cry. I had to be vulnerable. I had to tell my story of that little girl. The first time I told it, the second time I told it, I was embarrassed because I would start to cry when I would talk about her. And I thought, this is such a trite story. But you know what? It was emotional, and the world is run by emotions.
I think I would be embarrassed if I didn't cry in that story, right?
But I'm always embarrassed because I didn't grow up in an atmosphere,
right.
My job where you could have any emotion.
Right.
It had to be backed up by facts, but I found that when we are vulnerable, we tell a story, that's what connects us, that human thing. And everything we do is based on emotion. Everything. They used to say, buying, when you buy something, it's emotional. Yeah, well, everything we do is because of some emotion it evokes in us.
Well, companies like Nike have figured that out. Nike,
right.
Show me an ad that talks about their shoe.
That's right.
Most of the time, sometimes they run ads, you don't even see the shoe, right? They embrace and support and celebrate athleticism or people who want to make their lives better from a health standpoint. They have everything from Michael Jordan to chubby little kids trying to, lose a pound or two before football season starts. I mean, it's a celebration. And in those companies, Apple used to be a company like that. They've gone into like details about their product a little bit more than they used to, but they were all about identifying who their customers were and the uniqueness of their customers, the creators, as they like to say, the crazy ones, the ones who want to change the world, right? Artists and writers and painters and things like that. And they knew who their clients were. So in the early days, they didn't talk about RAM and gigahertz and, processor power and all that stuff. They showed pictures of, they ran the ad with Alfred Hitchcock and the Evel Knievel and people who all these people who were celebrated and criticized in their day. It was called the crazy ones. It was quite an interesting Einstein even quite an interesting ad that never even mentioned the word computer. Right. Yet it was impactful. So I totally agree. Finally, as we're about out of time, what advice would you give either to your young self when you were thinking of making the leap or the slide in this case? What advice would you give to either, I say young entrepreneurs, I don't necessarily mean chronologically young, but people who are just thinking about going into the entrepreneurial space. Maybe they're working a job, maybe they're fed up, maybe they have a product that's just burning a hole, in their soul, and they need to get it out to the world. That was my case. What's some good parting advice for them?
Well, I think follow your heart and know you have a purpose and discover it. Know what it is. A lot of us know what it is and we're afraid. We've already started down another path. We think it's crazy. We want to play the piano. Well, here we are, maybe we're a veterinarian. You know your purpose. You know it, and you know what your heart is calling you to do. And if we trust our heart, and the younger we start making our heart our North Star and understanding what our purpose is, what brings us joy, we share that. We're bringing other people joy. That's a gift. Not only do we give it to ourselves, but we give it to people, and that's what connects us, our hearts. So follow your heart, find your purpose, and then Nike, just do it.
Just do it. Oh, see that your TV marketing days and all that are coming back. Yeah, that was a great segue. Genevieve Piturro, thank you so much for being my guest, my second guest, my doubling guest on this brand new show. Your story is inspirational, and I'm sure it not only did it inspire me, I'm sure it will inspire anyone that watches or listens to this episode. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for doing what you do. Thank you for making the world a better place. And for those of my audience that would like to get more information on Genevieve and the company she founded, both website details will be in the show notes. So if you're watching this on YouTube, just somewhere down here, click on that area where it says show more, and you'll see information about what Genevieve is doing now and the company that she founded. And if you're listening to this on your favorite podcast app, when you get to your destination, don't do it while you're driving. Don't be one of those. And you can look at the show notes from your favorite podcast app, and that will also have that information as well. So Genevieve, thank you so much. I wish you continued success, and just do it. Just keep doing it. I love what you're doing.
Thank you, Mike, and I wish you millions of podcasts from this point forward.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, that's a wrap. Thanks for joining me on episode number 3 of the Reluctant Entrepreneur podcast. A very special thanks to my guest, Genevieve Piturro, for being my guest on this episode and sharing her insights and her personal journey into entrepreneurship. The Reluctant Entrepreneur podcast is available on all major podcast sites and on the Reluctant Entrepreneur YouTube channel. We've been recording future episodes with fascinating guests, so don't miss out. Subscribe to the podcast to be notified when new episodes are released. If you're an entrepreneur and would like to be a guest on the show, please let me know. Visit mikeconrad.com/podcasts and apply to be a guest. Just remember, that's Conrad spelled with a K. If you'd like to reach out to me, my email address is mike@mikeconrad.com. Again, that's Conrad spelled with a K. If you're interested in my book, The Reluctant Entrepreneur, Anatomy of a Business Startup from Uncertainty to Unstoppable, it's available as a paperback and a Kindle version, available on Amazon, and as an audiobook, available on both Audible and Amazon. Thanks again for listening or watching. Until I see you again, stay unstoppable.